Episode 16, Faith on a Block. Growing up in Terrace Gardens, you heard a lot of things. Basketballs bouncing on cracked pavement, people arguing across balconies, music shaking the walls of apartment buildings, police sirens cutting through the night, gunshots sometimes, too many times. People talked about money they didn't have, problems they didn't know how to solve, dreams they weren't sure they ever reach. But there was one thing my mother talked about more than anything else: God. And for most of my life, I didn't understand what she meant. My mother always had been like that, even when things were hard, even when the rent was late, even when the electric bill sat on the kitchen table like a warning. She always said the same thing: God got us. I remember one night when the lights almost got cut off. She was sitting at the table, going through bills, papers everywhere, her forehead wrinkled with worry. Cece was watching TV. Baby Tay was on the floor taking apart another toy like he was studying how the world worked. I leaned against the wall watching her. "How you always so calm?" I asked. She didn't even look up at first. Faith. I frowned. But if God got us, why we struggling? She stopped flipping through the papers, looked at me for a long moment. Then she said something that confused me back then. Because faith ain't about everything being easy, Charlie. I didn't understand her answer, honestly. I didn't understand most of what she said about God. Not when I looked outside and saw the reality around us. Manny hustling, Malik dealing with street problems, shootouts between neighborhoods, families getting evicted, kids growing up too fast. Sometimes it felt like God skipped places like Terrace Gardens, like he was too busy listening to people somewhere else. That Sunday morning, my mother walked into the living room early. "Everybody up." Cece groaned to her blanket. "It's Sunday." "Exactly." Baby Tay rolled off the couch dramatically. "Church again?" "Yes." I looked up from my notebook. "Do we have to?" She gave me that look, that one that meant the discussion was already finished. "Yes." An hour later, we were sitting inside a small church a few blocks away. The building was old, the wood pews creaked whenever somebody moved, but the place was packed. People from the neighborhood, some wearing their best clothes, some wearing whatever they had. A few guys who looked like they'd probably been outside until 3 in the morning, but on Sundays, everybody showed up eventually. That was something I never understood either. The same people you saw arguing outside all week were suddenly sitting quietly inside a church, looking for something. The pastor stepped up to the pulpit. Tall man, deep voice. They kind of filled the room even when the microphone. He started preaching, talking about struggle, talking about hardship, talking about people who felt like God forgot about them. That part caught my attention. He looked across the room. "I know some of y'all grew up in neighborhoods where trouble felt like it lives on every corner." A few nodded. "I know some of y'all wake up wondering if God even sees what you're going through." Now I was really listening, because it sounded exactly like my way. The pastor continued. "Some of y'all think because y'all life been hard, that means God don't care." He leaned forward. "But the truth is, God specializes in places that people overlook." The room got quiet. "God shows up in neighborhoods the world forgets." The sentence hits some inside me. But that's exactly how the world treated places like ours: forgotten, ignored, written off. The pastor's voice softened. "God sees the kids growing up surrounded by trouble." He looked across the room slowly. "God sees the mothers working themselves to exhaustion just to keep their families together." My mother squeezed Baby Tay's shoulder gently. "God sees the young men trying to figure out who they're trying to become." That part felt personal, too personal. Because suddenly, all the questions I carried, all the confusion about the block, all the moments when it felt like life had no direction, started to come back to me. Maybe faith wasn't about escaping the neighborhood. Maybe it was about surviving it without losing yourself. Near the end of the service, Pastor spoke again. "If you've been searching for purpose, if you've been wondering whether God cares about you, if you've been feeling lost, the altar is open." People started moving slowly. Some walked down the aisle. Some stayed in their seats praying quietly. My mother looked at me. She didn't say anything. She didn't push me. She just waited. For a moment, I stayed sitting there, thinking about everything. The neighborhood, the violence, the stories I've been writing, the people trying to survive day by day. The question I never said out loud: why am I here? Then something inside me shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, like a door opening somewhere inside my chest. Before I could overthink it, I stood up, walked down the aisle, stepped up to the altar. Later that night, I sat by the window again with my notebook. The courtyard looked exactly the same. Basketball games still going, music drifted through the air, people arguing across the balconies. Terrace Gardens hadn't changed, but something inside me had. I started writing in my journal. Sometimes faith doesn't start with understanding. Sometimes it starts with questions. But God doesn't remove people from hard places. Maybe he meets them inside those places. Maybe purpose doesn't come from escaping the block. Maybe purpose comes from surviving it without becoming what it tries to turn you into. Tonight, the neighborhood looked the same, but I felt different. And maybe that's where real change begins. Inside. Episode 16, Faith on the Block.